Hello everybody. Test, test. Okay. We have a viewer game analysis, a submission from the white side from a Discord member rated 1766, so very high rated game. Let's go through it. He plays e4, best by test. We have a Sicilian. He plays f4, trying to go for the speed run that we are currently doing with the King's Gambit pawn duo. Black plays e5, which is a little weird, but definitely playable, controlling the center. We can't take because of the queen h4 idea. Hopefully you guys remember that from all the videos. So development, center, and prophylaxis, good move. Development, center, and king safety, good move. A more principled potential move would be something like d4, because if they let you put these two pawns in the center, you really should consider it. Now in this specific position, if he takes, you can't take with the knight because of, again, the queen h4 idea. But you don't have to take that pawn back immediately. He's not going to be able to hold on to it. You're going to get it back. And the point is, you'll have gotten all these pawn moves on the fourth rank, so you're going to have tons of open lines to attack his king. So, for example, we take the pawn. I don't know. He develops, or does some. I mean, he could do any number of moves, but I don't know. Let's just say he develops. You can always take this back in a couple of turns. You could take it back right now. Any queen h4, you have g3 now, thanks to the bishop. And the point is, even if the pawn gets traded and you don't get to keep the pawn duo, the fact that you move that pawn means both your bishops have full vision because there's no pawns on the third blocking them, and you're going to have an open d file to mess with your heavies. So it's nice. So a strong, like a titled player would definitely consider d4. However, bishop c4 meets all the criteria and is a good move. Development and center, good move. Center and development for free, good move. Once again, I do want to mention d4 is probably the more principled approach, as if he takes, even if you give him the tempo, all of your, I mean, you have great development. This guy's coming out next, so you're going to be fully developed while he's still on the back row. You can castle either way. He has a weak isolated d pawn that's easy to target. In contrast, your isolated e4 pawn, not easy to target, super well defended, especially when a rook comes. And he can't really attack it because he's going to put his bishop here and he won't have access with his heavies. So a possible way to play, but d3 is also acceptable as it meets the criteria of center and development. So we take the bishop, and it's again another fine move. Now, just for your reference and for your knowledge so you can get stronger, there is an idea here and a pawn structure here that you're probably not familiar with, as I wasn't until I was exposed to it. And I learned it when I was looking at the bishop's opening, and that is we don't care if he takes this pawn. So let's say we just take our pawn back or castle, for example. I kind of like taking my pawn back, so let's take the pawn back. It doesn't matter if he takes this. As a matter of fact, we want him to take it, because when we take back, you may say, well, don't you have doubled pawns here and isolated pawns here? Isn't that a bad transformation for you? Specifically here, no, for many reasons. Now we have full immense control over the d5 square. It's ours permanently. There's nothing he can ever do about that. It becomes a power outpost. By moving the pawn, it's similar to me wanting to play d4 earlier to get rid of it so that our heavies have line of sight and activity down the d file, which the pawn blocks if it's on d3. And so, and again, he can't really easily target e4, and we have light square domination in the center and easy targets on his backwards weak pawn automatically. We didn't even need to move our queen and it's pressuring. So this structure, if you need to be exposed to it a couple times to realize it's a thing and it's playable and it's actually good for white. So let's just look at some random moves by black. What are some human moves they might do? Development and try to castle. So I don't know, bishop out or knight out, doesn't really matter. Let's say we do a human move like castle. They do a human move like, oh, the bar's not on. Hold on. Whoops. They do a human move like bishop here. right? Trying to castle. Let's say we do a human move like we say, "Ooh, we like this square. Let's use it," right? And he says, "Okay, I'm gonna castle." Immediately, if he castles, he loses due to some tactics. But the point of this isn't a tactic. The point is like, uh, let's say he tries another natural move, take the knight. Again, super strong pawn chain, super great activity down E and F. Our pawn chain gives us more space and an attack on the king that he can't do anything about. Very good for white. So basically, what I'm saying is that this is a well-known and established pawn structure, an idea that's good for white. So now you're exposed to it, so maybe you can try it in one of your future games. But if you've never been exposed to that before, I can definitely see this, you not wanting to do that, right? Because at first sight, it looks like you're just messing up your structure for no reason. So I get that. Okay, so you take the bishop, which, by him taking back, it does prevent you from hopping in here, but it also weakens his king. So there's give and take. We take our pawn back, developing for free. Excellent. And now, energetic, dynamic e5. I see you spent 77 seconds on this move, which is correct. You did not automatically castle like anyone rated 1000 to 1600 would automatically castle here. But you actually found a really nice move because when you can kick a knight from its favorite square, you should consider it. Now, the moves you should consider are the knight's central jumps. So you should be saying, if he goes knight d5, what's my response? If you don't have your response already made, don't push e5, right? Okay, this guy goes to the other way, which is super awkward because it's loose, all alone, can't go back to where it came from, and is being x-rayed in a crazy way by our queen. But for the time being, he's hitting our bishop. So we retreat the bishop, type of like it's forced that you have to move your bishop, but out of these two squares, in many, many, many positions, e3 is definitely the better square. But specifically in this position, d2 is the better square because of nuances. What are some of the nuances? Well, when you have two minor pieces, two squares away, that means they're very easily forkable. So you have to look out for that. But that's not really like the main thing. I think more importantly is you block the e file because realistically you're not going to let him fork you, right? So the thing is like we want to go, let's say d2, because if we got to make whatever setup we want, we would like to go queen e2 and x-ray his king, x-ray this weak light pawn so that if we take, we have access to a super weak pawn. And when a rook comes to the e file, that also wants vision. And so the bishop here, where you put it, actually blocks the heavies down the file they want to play. Sure, you want to play it down the F, but considering the weakness and the king, we want to play down the E just as much. So there's that nuance. But a move like this won't collapse your position. It'll just disrupt your initiative so that it's just going to take you longer to win the game because you're going to have to spend extra turns rerouting stuff. Okay. This guy says, aha, I see the fork. I'm going to go for it immediately. It's not a good move for many reasons. One, you don't want to release the tension in the center. When someone builds up a center, you need to undermine it. That's your goal. Not push past it and make it invincible, right? By pushing past, now your e5 pawn is invincible. You're going to have more space the rest of the game and a kingside attack because of it. Also, he didn't address his hanging or his loose knight, which is weird. And so, what do we play? Okay, so we go d4. How much time do we spend here? 14 seconds. Not enough time. That tells me you only considered the threat, but didn't consider your own forcing moves. So d4 is a good move. It's a great move. It's strategically the best move in the position. But what rivals strategy? That's tactics. So first and foremost, he makes this move. You say, what's the threat? He's going to fork me. What's the drawback? Okay, we undefends these squares. releases the tension in the center, and doesn't address this knight. So immediately I'm looking for moves. Can I do anything tactically to take advantage of this knight? So then I'm gonna have to go through in my brain, okay, does g4 do anything? Well, the knight is trapped, but he'll probably just counter me piece for piece. What else is there? I don't know. Can I move this knight somewhere and unleash the queen with some type of check? I'm not going home. This hangs. This hangs. No. One of these, and then I would see if any of them work. Okay, if I go back, g6, he protects the knight. It's possible if you want to induce that to go bishop h6, so maybe I'll do that. Let me go look at knight g5. Okay, knight g5. If I go there and he takes my knight, well, check, and I could pick up 2 pieces. He only got 1. I'll be up a piece. That looks decent. And if you go here and he goes g6, well, then he's hanging this. Oh, so I think I win stuff, right? So knight g5. But in order to come to that, I would have to spend like a minute on my clock to make sure, right? So that's how I know by spending 14 seconds you didn't consider all this. So you missed a tactic because you immediately responded to your opponent's threat instead of looking for your forcing moves. And so you did things out of order. You check your opponent's threats, you check their drawbacks, and then you look for your forcing moves. If your forcing moves don't create an equal or bigger counter threat than the initial threat you assessed, then you go to the next layer. You say, okay, I cannot create a threat at least as big as what my opponent's threatening. I have to address it. But in this case, you could create an even bigger threat, so you can ignore it. So that's the proper layering of thoughts. But we play a strategically desirable move. Fine. Black pushes past. Now he's 1800, so this is a weird move because every player, I mean, I feel like every player knows, but obviously not. Every player knows you don't release the tension in the center. Like when the pawn is on c5, this is like a French, right? And you know in the French, all of the counterplay comes by undermining the center. And in every opening, but it's very visible in the French. And so by pushing past, you release that tension, you release the possibility of undermining, and now you have an invincible pawn structure, which guarantees extra space the entire game. Not good for black. Also, more importantly, the only reason g4 didn't work in those lines was because he had the counter thrust forking us. So the second we go d4 and he goes c4, he no longer has that counter thrust and he's still hanging the knight. Ooh, wait. 3.6 seconds. You see, if you want to reach 2000, your brain needs to change. You cannot castle in 3 seconds. Why? Because your eyes see this knight is misplaced. So your brain goes, okay, the knight looks super awkward. And then your brain goes, oh wait, the knight's trapped. So then your brain should go, oh wait, can I win it? So the only thing you should be looking at is if g4 works, or if you can move the knight out of the way somewhere and attack this way. Castling is like way in the background after you try everything you can to win the knight and determine nothing works. Then you castle. But in order for that to happen, that means you need to spend at least 30 seconds on your clock. You spent 3. So this casual castling, while it doesn't collapse your position and you're completely winning strategically, you cannot reach 2000 in chess with this mindset, because this optically has to signal your brain as a critical moment. And in any critical moment, a strong chess player is going to take time. So like it just doesn't make sense what you did. Like you're not going to be able to beat strong players if you're not taking time in critical moments, right? It's not about the move, it's about the thought process. Critical moment, potential to win a knight, gotta take time. Just check it out. Okay. Development, prophylaxis, right? Because the knight now can't go to f4. Connecting the rooks, good move. Just so you guys know, it's plus 2.3, so white's totally crushing strategically. But that doesn't dismiss the fact that if you're going to play a move in 3 seconds casually, you might as well just play bullet. And this is a 15 plus 10 game. Okay, so he wants some evacuation square for the knight. And we determine that all of our pieces are reasonably placed. There's a weakness and a target, so we improve a piece for free. So he very much follows the principles that I lay out, basically all throughout the game. Okay, he defends the weakness. That's an awkward move. And then he goes a4, which tells me he didn't know what to do anymore in the position and kind of just made a random rook move. Now you see me do this sometimes in my games, but hopefully I provide a little context then why I'm doing it at those times. It's usually to stop some type of weird queenside expansion when the game is relatively even, but that's not the case here. First of all, that b5 is not even playable. Second of all, you don't want your rook activated on the a file. You want it activated on the f file, right? And one key thing to signal that is he entirely pushed past your pawns, which means he released all tension. So because the center's fixed and invulnerable, that should signal you to go full steam ahead on the king. We don't care about the queen side. If he goes queen b6, we're hanging this pawn. We're not defending it. We're going to checkmate this guy. That's where your mind needs to be at, right? So a4 is like, doesn't meet the needs of the position, kind of a random move. And it weakens b3, which may not seem relevant, but something about it I don't like. So since we know the f file is the most important file for like geometrically and for our attack, it would be nice if we had our rook and he didn't, because we want to dominate it. Now, is that possible? Sure, because we have rooks connected and he doesn't. So a very simple inclusion of, I mean, it doesn't matter how he takes back, but you bring the other rook in, he goes somewhere, who cares? Now we have a rook and he doesn't. All of a sudden, this transformation favors us. We can double stack, get in there, and his rook is in the corner. So that's an inclusion I would do. So let's say you still don't know. Let's say you, for some reason you think it's just neutral, rook for rook, and you don't play it. Okay, so if I'm looking for another move to play, I think my knight's very well placed. This battery is reasonable. I don't need to move them unless I have a specific reason. Okay, if I'm not going to make this inclusion of my rooks, my last piece is this knight. It's not meant to play on the queen side, so it needs to come assist the king. So naturally, knight e2 seems like a very nice move. Also an idea from the French, which allows you to play c3, create this beautiful pawn chain, and then your knight's super useful on the king side. It can go to f4 and just steamroll this pawn. But even if that pawn wasn't hanging, right? Knight here, g4, knight g3, h4, h5. Let's go get his king. So I would definitely improve the knight or do that rook trade thing. But we make a weird move which doesn't collapse your position, but also doesn't further your own plan on the king side at all. What? And then this 1800 rated player spent 21 seconds and blundered the game in one move. That's insane. He spent 21 seconds and didn't realize this was hanging. The only clear weakness in the position that he specifically defended, he suddenly undefends one turn later. That's what? Okay, that's a free win. Okay, hopefully we take it, and we do. Free stuff for free meets the criteria. Free stuff. Okay, this is a trade. Let's take back. And now you're totally winning, totally crushing. He's undeveloped, 8 points of material. You're up 3 points of material, and his king safety is terrible because you have access with these pieces. Now, there's definitely just like an easy move. Free stuff for free. This guy is unbelievable. This guy is about to be checkmated like in 10 different ways. And he goes and grabs a pawn. Like, you see, that thought process is totally wrong. even though he's obviously going to lose, it's +9, right? So it's over. But even if you wanted to try not to lose, you would have to pick some type of defensive move where your queen gets closer to your king. Just hypothetically or theoretically to help defend against mate. You don't move away from the king and grab a random pawn that has nothing to do with the game, because then you're guaranteed to get mated, right? With no resistance. So he goes here. Okay. Now, psychologically, I like this move because if you do it, he's likely to instantly resign. But objectively, I don't like this move because I mean, his king is so weak that any titled player in this position would go for the checkmate. No one's going for this rook. Not a single titled player. So, of course, I'm just making that up. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, for me, there's not a chance I would go for that rook. I would 1000% look for checkmate here. At the very least, I would say to myself, well, if I put my queen on one of these squares, I'm threatening mate in one. Even if he defends against mate in one with the rook, let's say, he can't defend both squares at once. So I'm going to go like here, threatening mate in one. He'll, I don't know, defend it. Then I'm going to go here. He's going to go over. And I don't know, this looks good enough for unstoppable mate, right? Okay, he can delay it. Bishop g7. Then we threaten mate this way. It's going to be mate, right? However you look at it. Not to mention there might be some like rook sack, king over, check. I don't know where does he even go. Like wherever he goes, let's say he moves the king anywhere. This always exists at the end of whichever line you pick. So as far as becoming a stronger player, you need to go more for critical lines, dangerous lines, more, that do more damage. Because there will be situations in which, yeah, you go for the rook, not in this game, but in other games, but that takes so much time and offside your knight, your opponent will get back in the game because you didn't go for the king. Doesn't apply here though. So yeah, obviously going for the rook is a good move and winning, but oh, and he does resign. So this was like a perfect game by white in the sense that if we look at the flow, we get our pawn presence right away. And development in center, development in center, development in center, development in center. Let's say forced trade, development in center, energetic move, disrupting his development in center, which gives us a relative advantage development in center wise. Forced move, right? We got control of the center, king safety and development, improving pieces for free, free stuff, free stuff, free stuff, free stuff. So it almost certainly follows our speedrun logic of development, center, king safety, improve for free, free stuff, right? He almost perfectly followed it, and that's why he seamlessly destroyed in 1800 a couple of missed tactical opportunities, which will happen in every game. I don't mind the missed tactical opportunities. What I mind is that he spent 3 seconds and on another turn 15 seconds on in critical moments that required more time, right? Like a stronger thought process will require more time than that in those moments. If you just incorporate that into this game, your rating wouldn't be, you would have played easily above this rating. You'd be over 2000, over 2100 even, like if you just incorporated that thought process in it, because your game was essentially perfect otherwise. So just take a little bit more time. This is a 15-minute game. You had so much more time than your opponent for the majority of the game. You still have 12 minutes on your clock here. So just take a little more time. If you see something's awkward in the position, and otherwise, really great game. I would like to see more of your games, but preferably where you got crushed as opposed to you seamlessly destroying your opponent. Um, yeah, good game though. Really good stuff. And keep it up. Keep up the good work. And keep playing 15-minute games. I like this. Thank you, and goodbye.